Hello. We will discuss how state of Ohio responded to multiple use cases resulting from the pandemic and how they use Control Tower to do so. My name is Kaushik Mohanty, and I'm a business development and specialist sales leader at AWS, focused on the worldwide public sector business. Joining me would be Arwan Rogers, who's the CIO of State of Ohio and Assistant Director of Office of Information Technology. Also joining would be Tracy Romick, who's the Cloud Brokerage Manager at the Department of Administrative Services in the state and has worked in state government for almost 30 years. She has been building and managing a cloud smart team of superheroes over the last 4 years, providing architecture and IT guidance and services to the state's private and public cloud initiatives. So over the next 25 minutes, we will talk about how the state went about their hybrid cloud smart approach and enhanced their agility, focusing on early decisions, enabling them to move quickly and more efficiently to deal with the crisis emerging from the pandemic. I will then talk about how customers do not have to choose between agility and governance, and they can get both by usage of services like Control Tower. So without any further ado, I would request everyone to take it away.
Thank you, Kaushik. Appreciate the intro. Hi, my name is Irvin Rogers. I am the State of Ohio State CIO. In addition to that, I have responsibility as the Assistant Director for the Department of Administrative Services. I'd like to welcome you to Ohio. If we were in a room, I would give you a big OH and expect an IO in return. So OHIO. Through our Cloud Smart initiative, we've been able to do some really incredible things. We've been able to move at a speed in which government has not necessarily been characterized as doing in the past. Particular with one of our cloud vendors, AWS, we have a whole host of applications that we're going to highlight today, share with you, encourage you to try them out so that you can also be as speed as we are, kind of like the Flash. With regards to taking action, having agility, a governance model, we needed to ensure that we had a solid foundation in place. So we're leading off with a center-led approach with our Cloud Smart initiative, which includes AWS products. We also have a environment that's inclusive of cloud providers, in addition to that of our SOC. Our SOC is our state data center, in which we have an on-prem cloud solution. So it's a combination of those particular products, in which Ohio has taken a cloud smart approach. We were cloud first, and now we're cloud smart. Cloud first was the initial outreach to make sure that when you rebuilt an application, refactored it, that you use the cloud first. However, without having a strategy in place, that became, kind of everyone was doing their own thing. And what we realized very quickly is that we needed to, have something from the center. And that's what Tracy's going to highlight from her team's perspective with the Cloud Smart initiative. A number of things. We had events here in Ohio, especially during the COVID environment. We started the Cloud Smart initiative probably about just roughly 2 years, just when I started as state CIO, and it's in our best interest that we did that, because ultimately it's paid big dividends for us. At the height of the pandemic, we were able to leverage many services from that center of excellence. One in particular, in which I've worked for the Governor Mike DeWine for 6 years now. And I've gotten to know him pretty well. He is a very high, energetic, about the people kind of governor. And with his help and assistance, he's been able to ensure that we're doing the best thing for Ohioans. So he wanted to get the word out on a daily basis. And so, we had a platform where in which people could tune into state government. On a high day, we might have had 500 people that might have tuned in to that of our briefings, and that was like the state of the state. However, with some of the stay-at-home orders early on in the pandemic, we had all of Ohioans were at home trying to tune in. And many of them were, in their workplace, in their cars, all over the place. And they couldn't necessarily tune into a TV. So we were using the Ohio channel. The first 3 days, we laughed and joked that the governor broke the internet. After the third day, I knew that it wasn't going to be funny anymore. So we partnered with AWS, the streaming service, to really deliver in fast lightning bolt type of a scenario where we got it built in less than 2 to 4 days. Tracy's going to talk about that, but I never thought I'd get a chance to put TV producer on the end of my credentials with regards to my resume. The Center of Excellence is really, focused on our strategy to ensure that, we are, start with security in the very beginning so that you end up with a very secure product. And by having cloud architects a part of the Cloud Smart Initiative, we ensure that all of those basic things are put in place. It's very, very easy to set up a server, with a credit card. However, it's very hard to duplicate those critical skills, lessons learned, et cetera. And that's what the Cloud Center of Excellence brings to the table. We're really, really grateful for those men and women that have dedicated their time and effort on Tracy's team. The second part of that is that we're enablers, right? Although it's center led, we're enablers. We're enabling the agencies to do the things that they need to do. And with this platform, that gives the agencies the ability to focus in on the applications. It's really a magnificent thing. It reminds me of my time in private industry when I was working as a consultant flying all over the world, and we were delivering projects in months versus years. This is not your grandfather's government. This just like the commercial. This is not your granddad's Buick. We're doing things lightning speed and with an innovative mindset. Our state has an initiative led by our Lieutenant Governor John Husted called Innovate Ohio, and that thought is really around being creative, innovative, to deliver government services to our citizens in a very, very digitized way. Citizens have and taxpayers have basically come to depend on government services in a different light, especially with COVID. They're looking for those services to be digitized and available to them at their fingertips, similar to going to an Amazon or to, et cetera, and being able to have it anticipate. That's what we're trying to build here with Innovate Ohio concept. Before I turn it over to Tracy, one of the things that I'm extremely proud of is our COVID-19 response. It's one in which, not only was Governor DeWine out in the leading forefront with, 4 or 5 governors, but, from a technology perspective, we needed to be there as well. So our COVID website, coronavirus.ohio.gov, is one in which, we're using a lot of the streaming services to the CDN technologies as well in order to make sure that everybody can access that website and not necessarily be interrupted due to traffic concerns, et cetera. So again, when you're trying to reach the citizens and the taxpayers, it's important to make sure that you are in a ready position. AWS enables us to do that. So with that, I give you OH.
IO. So thank you, Irvin, for that. Pretty excited to be a part of this team at the state of Ohio. And I have to say, when Irvin joined us and he was doing his chant of OHIO, I picked up on that very quickly because I am an alumni of the Ohio State University. And so go Buckeyes and OHIO. So as Kaushik said earlier, I have been serving in the state of Ohio for almost 30 years now. And I'm proud to say that during that whole experience in those 30 years, I've been just blessed to serve the citizens of the state of Ohio. So I have to thank my experience and everything of that sort. Just it's been very good. So thank you, Irvin, for this opportunity in growing our Cloud Center of Excellence. I would be remiss if I didn't thank my team as well. We are a small team, but we have 3 cloud architects, Jim Patterson, Jason Fote, and Jerry Leskiv. They are our public cloud architects, and they spend the majority of their time in the 3 different public clouds that we offer under our brokerage service. And then we also have another gentleman, Mark Sampson, who keeps us all very organized. And his role as a project/program manager with the public clouds is essential for us. So I thank my team. They work very hard, and I just want to shout out to them and say thank you very much. We wouldn't be here today talking about what we do in our business without the 4 of them. So thank you to them. So the first thing that we found when Irvin came in is this move to Cloud Smart. And as he referenced earlier, we went from a cloud first into Cloud Smart, which is, a direction that we were very excited about, pleased about. And so as we worked with the fact that we had multiple clouds that we were supporting, and we were going to be supporting multiple agencies in, one tenant, one account, the organization and the framework that we had to kind of put together in order to support the multitude of agencies, our workings with AWS as well as the other public cloud vendors was, like Irvin said, security. We had to put down a framework in which we could govern, but also be very flexible. One of the things we hear from our agency customers is, they need to be able to do whatever it is that they want to do, and that flexibility, being able to scale and quickly do things for them was very important. So we were preparing for what that would look like in AWS. And so as we started off in AWS, our big push was landing zone. So we really focused in on what we thought landing zone could provide for us. And our AWS team that we work with in Ohio, we started having this conversation about Control Tower and what that could offer a team like ours. We were very small and supporting a very large amount of accounts that could possibly be in the structure and the organization that we had. And so we started looking at Control Tower. We actually started having conversations with Kaushik at that time about what Control Tower offered us, how we could potentially use it, where were the gaps between what we had configured in landing zone versus Control Tower. And so after a few different iterations, we decided, we're going to go all in with Control Tower. It allows us to quickly provision and be reassured that the governance that we needed, the security boundaries and everything that we do, around our data and compliance and everything like that, we were able to do that. And so we went full in with Control Tower, and the decision to make any new account that we would provision with AWS would be using Control Tower. And so we put ourselves, I think, in a really good position for what was to come. We had no idea that this pandemic would hit and what it would rush in the needs around technology. And so we were pretty I would like to say we were in a really good position when the pandemic hit to react and be able to facilitate and provide exactly what the agencies needed. And so with that, today, what I'd like to talk about are 3 different use cases because of the pandemic that came our way. Irvin touched on the governor's live stream a little bit, but what happened with the press conferences and the fact that Ohioans were tuning in every day to hear updates from the governor, and that caused an overwhelming amount of connections, of course, and people trying to get in. And so, with the help of the AWS team as well, we moved forward with setting up AWS streams. And so, with that, we could get the streaming actually aligned to our current application that we had in process, where we could just do an easy flip over from one to the other in order to support what the press conference was going to bring. And so every day, Ohioans are tuning in. We actually, I think that the as I recall, the first press conference was sort of towards the end of 1 week. And then what we realized is that starting on that Monday, we were really going to get hit hard. And so our resources were able to basically say, well, let's stand up that control tower account. Let's get streams set up. And within 2 days, we were testing. And then in 3 days, we were providing that service to the governor and the other agencies that support that press conference every day. And so what may have taken us, the traditional timeline for projects, what could have taken us, months, maybe, took us actually like 4 or 5 days. So that was pretty exciting for us to be able to provide a service like that in such a short time frame. So as we move forward into the other things that were coming our way, it was employees are going home. We need to send them home, keep them safe. We need to have them work from home. And so with that, some agencies were pretty prepared for what that meant, but there were some other agencies that weren't necessarily so prepared for the masses of folks trying to get into their systems and access the resources that they needed to access. So we started working with our Department of Public Safety. They are one of the agencies that requires a lot of security. They wanted to test out what AWS workspaces would bring and how that would work for them. And so within 2 days, we created the account with Control Tower. We spun up a proof of concept. I was going to say demo, but it was really a proof of concept with AWS workspaces. We were able to get the resources at DPS that they wanted to test this out. We'd get them into the system, and they were able to basically test after 3 days with a fully functional system with AWS workspaces. So we were pretty pleased about, a virtual desktop instance can, that type of project. I have some experience on that on the other side of the house where, that sort of project can take quite a while to get stood up. 3 days is amazing. So working with AWS and their team and our architects, key person in that, Jason Vogt, is an amazing architect that works in AWS primarily. Within 3 days, people are testing the AWS workspaces. So that was pretty exciting for us. The third use case that I would like to talk about is our jobs and family services and what the pandemic really brought on as far as aid to folks who now found themselves out of work. Ohio citizens that really needed the aid and the extra care and feeding, that they normally wouldn't. Unemployment was really just for certain particular situations. And now this brought on a whole new workforce that had to be provided with unemployment. And so the call center at JFS was getting just an abundance of calls. And so, they went from taking in, hundreds of calls to now taking in, 20,000s of calls. And that was it was a big deal. So we actually engaged with AWS in their ProServe, and we got resources aligned with my team and the JFS team to start looking at AWS Connect. So we took a couple of days to actually get everyone together and start talking about what the needs were. And this was a very large endeavor, to stand up what in essence would be a whole new call center to support the pandemic unemployment. So we took approximately, a 2-day to get the account stood up with Control Tower and get access into all the different entities that needed the access into the account. We stood up the Connect. We worked with AWS ProServe, and we were able to get the requirements from multiple vendors that were actually in the situation, not just AWS, but to gather all those requirements and then to move into a production situation in 7 days. Yes, you heard that correctly. 7 days with a new call center. That was an amazing feat. Of course, it was an all hands on deck, and we were able to provide that assistance that was needed at JFS with them bringing in additional resources. We helped bring in the additional resources on the technology side. And so that was a pretty exciting time as well for us in supporting jobs and family services in the pandemic. So pretty exciting around the fact that what would normally take days, weeks, months to get requirements even, to have a solution stood up in 7 days for job and family services was pretty amazing. So in summary, I would say that AWS allowed us the flexibility that we needed. The Control Tower gave us the security and governance that was needed. We don't want to hinder what the agencies can do with the different services within AWS, but we also want to make sure that we are secure and that, for our state of Ohio, that we keep those things definitely in check. And so governing while being flexible, not the easiest task, but Control Tower helped us to get there. So what we found is that when we move to the public clouds, we're looking at cloud native resources and services, and we want to try to spend our time in that space. That's what we describe as cloud smart, and it allows us to move quickly, and it definitely allows us to be more flexible. When you have a centralized IT group that is trying to support the multiple, that it's very hard to actually please everyone. And with the model and the framework that we came up with working within AWS, I think that we've actually achieved that. So I thank you for this time today to talk to you about what Ohio has been doing. I would say that in looking back when we started this journey, we kind of started looking at landing zone and what that provided for us. As soon as we started having the conversations with our AWS Ohio team about Control Tower, we realized that really fit where we were going, what we needed to provide, and how we needed to quickly react to what the state of Ohio needed. And so I would say as we were moving forward into this new cloud smart, we knew that the agencies were going to be coming in very fast with their own development of their cloud strategies and how they wanted to look at moving into these cloud services. And so this has really allowed us to provide it to them securely and quickly. So I thank you for this time today to talk about what the state of Ohio is doing. I thank Irvin for his confidence in our team and for us to get the job done. So thank you, Irvin, for that. And just one last time, we're going to say OHIO. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tracy. That was a nice overview of how the state dealt with the crisis emerging from the pandemic. And we now talk about how Control Tower is set up to help our customers in terms of offering governance with agility, and it's governance by the side versus coming in the way of agility. So customers can actually have both without having to make any trade-off between the two. Governance at the end, where the Cloud Center of Excellence, Central IT, information security teams have a role to play to ensure that their environment, cloud environment, is secure, compliant, and is being operated in a seamless manner, and there is good spend management rhythm in place. At the same time, you are offering self-service capability to your end users, ability for them to experiment and respond quickly to changes. That's what Control Tower brings for you. Let me talk a little bit about a portfolio of services in AWS, which we call management and governance services. Control Tower belongs to what we call the enablement services. Enablement services essentially enable your AWS environment, a multi-cloud environment, if you need to set that up in a governed manner. The provisioning services essentially help you provision products for consumption, and the services that fall in the operations category are the ones that look into the day-to-day monitoring of your AWS environment. By virtue of monitoring, you are able to manage, and these services help you do that. So they essentially go beyond day 1 to day 60, day 90, day 360 in terms of your ongoing operations. And how do all these come together and work for you? You initially set up what we call a landing zone in AWS, which is a multi-account environment. You manage access to that environment through centralized identity and federated access services like single sign-on. You could also use any third-party SAML 2.0 compliant services like Okta or Azure AD for getting users to federate into your environment and using resources that are set up in Control Tower. You establish guardrails, which is essentially for enforcement of policies. And I'll talk about how these are done at a service level, at a product level. And then finally, you automate compliant and secure account provisioning. And after you do all that, you manage it on an ongoing basis continuously. Let me give you a feel for what goes under the hood of Control Tower. Now, this is a mouthful in terms of enabling a best practices setup environment with all the blueprints associated with it. It's pre-configured, it's automated in a few clicks, it's secure by design and scalable by default. So that's in essence what Control Tower brings to the table. And under the hood of Control Tower, as Control Tower is an abstraction layer for the 15 services that I spoke about, it essentially orchestrates and automates those services to work in conjunction. And what it does is enables certain capabilities. It sets up a multi-account environment organized under AWS organizations. These accounts are spun in a standardized, secure, compliant manner using service catalog by virtue of something that's called an account factory. The centralized log archive is set up using CloudTrail and AWS config rules. The cross-account audit capability, and all of these things you see in this chart on the left side, where the boxes in red are the ones that call out the services, AWS services, and the ones in purple are the outcome of some of those services that are manifest in the form of accounts, be core accounts or custom accounts, the single sign-on directory. And then what happens is stack sets help you service requests across multiple regions. As Control Tower gets deployed, it's supported in multiple regions. The end user account provisioning, while it is done through service catalog, you want to make sure that you are also getting notifications and you're able to monitor your overall health in the cloud. And those are enabled through CloudWatch and Amazon Simple Notification Service. So all these different services come under the hood of Control Tower to enable a multi-account cloud environment for you with governance. And many customers then ask us, okay, we can start with Control Tower, where do we go with it? How do we address those use cases that they deal in day in and day out? Now that could be done with the help of partners. They'll help you create an AWS environment with their solutions. So we've got several partner solutions integrated with Control Tower for deployment and for ready to access capabilities being offered to the customers. These solutions leverage core Control Tower resources as lifecycle events and centralized logging bucket. These are some of the capabilities in Control Tower that they harness. And what we also provide to customers is step-by-step guidance and through the guides, as well as CloudFormation for automation of the integration aspect. With that, I would like to share some resources that you could use and take certain action. And this is where you can find access to the labs, the immersion day content, that immersion days that we conduct for customers. It is done on a one-on-one basis. We also have activation days where we have multiple customers get to set up their own Control Tower and try out the new labs that we keep bringing to the table. And then you can access the blogs and get started. And there is a nice, there are a couple of nice videos that you have access to as well. So the way forward is, please do avail of activation days and immersion days to get a jump start as you adopt Control Tower. And your first point of contact would be your account managers and the solution architects covering your account. And please do provide AWS feedback, not only on Control Tower after your experience, but also on this session after you've been through this whole session today. Thank you.